Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and I'm back with part 2 of the Kislev Rework series, because this time I did the smart thing of writing the entire script beforehand instead of doing it a part at a time. So these should be coming out pretty close together. The only tricky part is the editing part, so everyone wish Skeleton good luck on that. But in any event, last time, we're not going to waste any time, we're just going to hop straight into it. Last time we did the supporter race mechanic for Kislev. So today we're going to move to kind of an adjacent mechanic, that being a unique resource that the Kislevite factions, with the exception of Mother Osnakia, have access to, called Devotion. So this resource is earned through several processes during the campaign, such as building Orthodox churches and the Hallowed Forest building trees. Certain character skills can generate devotion per turn. You notably see this on, I think, Kostaltyn Katerin. You can also get it from rare events, and it's also the most common way you'll get it is as a post-battle option against certain chaos-aligned enemies. So if you fight a chaos faction, you will not only automatically generate devotion, but you also have an option down below that'll give you even more depending on the size of the battle. There also is a way to get some devotion through hero actions, but that depends on what character you're playing, as Kostaltyn gets it through Patriarch's actions and Katerin gets it through Ice Maiden actions. And then when you mouse over the devotion thing at the top where it tells you like how to generate it, supposedly you can get devotion through tech, like gain it, not just lose it, but gain it through tech. I've not been able to find that anywhere. I've never been able to find a tech that generates any devotion. So I think that might just be like a small error in the system, because you can spend it, but I've never been able to find a way to gain it, despite the way that the game attempts to communicate that information. But speaking of spending it, this resource can also be spent on certain technologies in the tech tree, invoking the Motherland, certain events, and to declare war on Kislevite factions, as it does actually cost you devotion to declare war on them. You can also use devotion, like we spoke about yesterday, to affect the supporter race. I think you could spend like 200 to take off 50 supporters or something like that from your enemy. And then last but certainly not least, Boris Ursus has a unique interaction with devotion where he can spend it in order to completely nullify negative effects given from settlements in chaos terrain, which is actually probably one of the coolest commandment effects in the game. It's a really, really unique one. I actually really like it a lot. So the current spending options for devotion, I think, are perfectly fine, as far as using it for some powerful techs, using it for Boris Ursus's commandments, using it for invocations, all that stuff. I think that's great. I also think that the ways to earn devotion is totally fine. However, there is a function of devotion that is currently completely broken in game. So next to the devotion resource at the top right of your campaign screen, there's a green shield. This indicates that you have enough devotion, the people are devout enough to prevent chaos incursions. Now, back during the release build, the symbol would change colors if the player didn't maintain high levels of devotion. I want to say it went to yellow and then red. So I think if you had less than, I want to say if you had less than 80 to 100, it would turn yellow. And then at a very much lower level, it would turn red. When it's yellow, there would be a small chance of a chaos army spawning somewhere within Kislev to attack the player. But when it's red, there would be a much higher chance of a chaos incursion spawning. During a prior patch, Creative Assembly decided to just break the mechanic completely by changing it where you have a green shield so long as your devotion isn't negative. So if you have 0 or 1 devotion, your green shield, you're good to go, no chaos incursions. The issue here is that getting negative devotion is damn near impossible. The only way I've been able to discover to get negative devotion is that you have to already have less than 100. So you have to like invoke an invocation, and then you have to declare war on another Kislevite faction, which gives you a -100 penalty to knock it even lower. there is no way to passively lose devotion. You have to get rid of it somehow. But the game won't allow you to spend devotion as a resource to go negative. So, for instance, you couldn't decide that you're going to unlock all of the techs on turn 1 and spend like 800 devotion in exchange for just being at like a huge penalty and like, oh no, I'm going to generate lots of chaos devotions, but at least I have these techs. It doesn't let you do that. You can't spend what you don't have, but you can get penalized to go negative. So this means that functionally, the chaos incursion feature is completely removed from the game. It does not work. You also cannot get worse than a yellow symbol, which is a small chance of chaos incursion. It's got like a little demon face. Because even at exactly negative 100 devotion, you're still at yellow and you cannot go lower. It is impossible to go below 100 devotion. Even if you declare war on other Kislev factions, it caps out at negative 100. So now I'm beginning to wonder if the red symbol doesn't even exist and I'm just misremembering. So like, I could have sworn that it used to be yellow was like a crack shield and then red was the demon face, but now it's just yellow is the demon face. So could be that I'm misremembering things or that CA just made the red completely impossible to get to. I'm going to very bluntly say this is not a good thing. This is a terrible decision and was an extremely lazy way to patch up a feature I guess several people complained about. But I don't think that removing the feature and just deleting it off the face of the earth was an acceptable way to deal with it. So with those issues in mind, what should be done? Well, to be honest, I think devotion is one of those features that in and of itself, the resource works perfectly fine. I would suggest some better clarification on the tooltip when you mouse over it about exactly which enemy factions specifically generate devotion from fighting. So it should be Beastmen, Norska, Warriors of Chaos, Demons of Chaos, the Mono God factions, and Chaos Dwarves. Contrary to some belief, Skaven are not actually an official Chaos faction in Warhammer Fantasy. They are a Chaos faction in Age of Sigmar, but not in Fantasy. The only thing I'd note is when it comes to devotion, some additional methods to spend it I think would be really nice. Like perhaps you could use it in the ice training system, but that's something we'll talk about later on when we talk about ice training, so we're not going to worry about it right now. Much more important to me are the chaos incursions. This needs to be repaired because the current implementation is non-functional. I would suggest we should roll it back to the old system, where in order to have a green symbol, you need to have 100 plus devotion. So you have to have more than 100 devotion. Perhaps then you could make 30 to 99 devotion has the player in the yellow, where you have a small chance of a chaos army popping up somewhere in your territory and attacking. And then anything less than 30 so 29 and below takes you into the red, where you have a high chance of a chaos incursion happening. However, to make the feature a bit more modern and less frustrating, how about instead of spawning just a random army like a rebellion, I would instead recommend taking the Wood Elf approach. So the player gets a notification about that their lack of devotion has led to increasing corruption among the people, and now a chaos horde is building up to take advantage of this spiritual weakness. An icon should appear somewhere within the player's borders on the campaign map that gives the players, let's say, 2 to 3 turns to attack it. If they attack it, the player will get to fight a smaller, weaker force on advantageous ground. But if they ignore it, when the timer ends, a powerful, let's say, 20-stack army should rise out of the Oblast and attack and terrorize the lands of Kislev until it is dealt with. I would heavily recommend making this a fun, unique feature by making it a unique rogue army faction that spawns that has access to high-tier Norska, Warriors of Chaos, and Demons of Chaos units. That way, as a rogue army, it would have the ability to claim settlements. It would have the ability to continue spreading and build up armies if the player doesn't deal with it. This would allow it to be an interesting, unique foe that the player would genuinely need to be wary of, while not being a feature that would feel unfair. If you're a player that doesn't want to deal with this and you tend to have a much more cautious approach, you can either A, just keep your devotion high, or B, make sure you just snipe these armies before they have the chance to get big. You know, you can make it where it's like, oh, if you attack them early, they maybe have like 9 units and then a character, but they're not particularly powerful. It's mostly like marauders, maybe like a singular, maybe like 1 or 2 units of Kislevite Kossars or whatever to kind of give that theme of corruption. Maybe like a unit of Furies and one other thing. Like pretty simple, easy armies that if you have a 20 stack, you can just smash it into the ground. But this would just, I think, allow for a really interesting dynamic. So keeping good devotion levels would be important, but if a player wants to, say, build money and experience by fighting a powerful foe, they can. Furthermore, since this would spawn chaos armies, it would give the player a guaranteed method of rebuilding their devotion. So it would be impossible to be stuck at low devotion unless the player was just deliberately choosing to. Because say you're at like, oh, I'm at 20 devotion because I've done a couple things, a big chaos army spawn. Well, since I attacked that big chaos army, I've now built up a bunch more devotion. So I'm back to being at a healthy level. So it's not something where you can get like caught in a loop of just, oh my God, I'm drowning in bad chaos stuff, unless you're just spending devotion like crazy and you get yourself in that position, in which case, you know, it's your own damn fault. So I really, really do think that would be the ideal way to just deal with that mechanic, making something interesting and fun. So that wraps up devotion for now, but I think we have enough time to go ahead and move on to Motherland Invocations. These are 4 campaign abilities, one for each of the Kislevite gods, which grant some decent buffs in exchange for devotion. In addition, they each grant an influx of supporters for doing certain actions. For some reason, the invocations become more expensive every time one of them is used. This isn't a huge deal, as the player can easily acquire considerable amounts of devotion very, very easily. But I've always found it a little odd that they never explain why, but unlike most of these ritual-like mechanics, the Kislevite one becomes more expensive every time you use it. But, like I said, not a huge deal. Finally, each of the invocations can be buffed for a more powerful version by researching a specific tech in the technology tree relating to that specific god. To be honest, the invocation system seems fine to me. They each have their niche and are good in certain situations. It may be worth Creative Assembly going through each of their buffs to ensure they all feel useful and that the upgrades are enjoyable. For instance, I find the tech tree upgrade you can get for the invocation of Dawes to be vastly superior to the others, as not only does it increase the effectiveness of what the invocation already does, which increases your income from certain things, but then also gives the player a damn elemental bear summon, which is incredible. So one thing that I would recommend is maybe ensuring that each one of the invocations grants an exciting army ability to use, with Dawes and Soliak's army abilities being locked behind the tech tree, whereas Urson and Tor, who are of course more military focused, they start with their combat abilities already unlocked, but the effectiveness of their abilities gets better with their tech buffs. So maybe Soliak, once you upgrade her ability through your tech tree, could get access to an army ability that has like a big heal. So like a single target ability that you could use on one of your single entities that gets them a ton of health back, or it could be like a pretty decent AoE heal, and regardless of what it is, she can use it like 3 times per battle, seems to kind of be the standard. But something along those lines to make her more consistent with the other 3, especially as you get into late game. Because Soliak's is amazing, especially early game. It gives you big growth and casualty replenishment, which are fantastic. But it definitely falls off a bit as you get into the late game. So having it where she could get like a big army ability heal when her invocation is active and you spent the devotion to upgrade it, I think would be really nice. But that is actually going to be it for this video. Like I said, I'm trying to keep these pretty bite-sized. That way we can kind of just hit each of them, and you can watch this really casually, but I'll make these into a playlist. So this is the second video in the playlist where you can watch them all back to back to back if you're so inclined. Please do let me know if you prefer this system. I think this will be a little better for feedback reasons. So please do let me know, what are your thoughts on Devotion, the Chaos Incursion mechanic, and the Motherland Invocations, because those are the focus of this video. I do want to note that the next video, we're going to talk about the ice training system, and I do have an idea of to wrap Devotion into it, so I'm going to suggest more ways to spend Devotion by basically allowing you to do something kind of similar to the High Elves, where when you're picking the new traits for your ice training characters, which obviously I'm going to recommend some pretty huge changes to ice training, but maybe making it like the High Elf influence system where you can spend Devotion to get some like higher tier traits instead of just the basic ones. But we'll talk about that in that next video. In any event, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day and taking care of yourselves. We'll be back next time for ice training in addition to some other stuff. And then we'll be moving on to, I think next video is going to be ice training and adamants. And then after that, we start moving into faction specific things. So yeah, see you then. Thanks for watching.